Do you have a favorite title, Make Them Die Slowly or Cannibal Ferox? Which one do you think's better?
Make Them Die Slowly, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a good question, because I mean, like, what is a ferox? Is that a ferret? Is that an ox? It doesn't, like, it's not a word that I normally use, but Make Them Die Slowly was just, like, the ultimate title as a kid. I remember being 12 years old, it's like, the only movies we wanted to see were, like, Blood-Sucking Freaks and Make Them Die Slowly.
Banned in 31 countries.
Yeah, the more countries it was banned in, the bigger the video box, the better. So yeah, I'd much prefer Make Them Die Slowly. But out of respect to the maestro, I will call it Cannibal Ferox.
And is that right over there?
Okay, so Thanksgiving was one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'm just wondering, is there any hope in hell that that will become a full-length movie?
Yes, there is, for real.
That would be, okay, that
We're
would be
working on it right now. Actually, my co-writer, Jeff Rendell, who plays the Pilgrim in the trailer, we finally kind of buckled down like 2 months ago and we cracked the story. And there are 2 writers that I'm partnering with. We are close to closing the deal, so we can't announce it, but I definitely want to shoot that movie. I can't not. It's one of those ideas that won't let me go to sleep. And those are the ideas that I listen to. There's certain ideas you have, and you think about it, and you're excited about it, and then you forget about it, and 2 years later you're like, oh, I forgot I was going to do that. And then there are ideas that every night you go to sleep, you're like, if you literally can't die if you die without making that movie, your life is a failure. Like, that's what I think. So I have to do it.
I wanted to know why cannibals? Since you're coming out with the Green Inferno, what's with the fascination with cannibals?
I think it's the last boundary of human taste that's still repulsive to people. You know, I think that there's all kinds of violence and tool violence and gun violence that people are sort of inured to, but the idea that we would eat our own species is something so inherently terrifying. And I also think that we've become so technologically connected and things are so advanced in our society, in our civilization, and our whole world is in our phones and the stuff we can broadcast ourselves 24 hours to everyone in the world if we want, that there's the idea that it doesn't exist anymore and there's nothing left, but the idea that there are parts of the world that are completely uncontaminated by modern technology, do they still exist, and what would happen in those places is fascinating to me.
Between the Hostel movies and your love of cannibal movies, do you not want us to leave our parents' basements, like, ever?
I mean, I still feel like I live in my basement. I mean, I basically recreated my basement into my entire life, and I just moved it upstairs. If you go, it's funny because, you know, as a kid, I had all the posters from the video store, like, and Colin can confirm this, he's been in my house, like, literally my poster for Mother's Day in pieces that I had in 1985, they were all like chewed up and eaten by ants, and I took them to a professional poster restorer in Los Angeles and had them like restored to mint condition and repainted and are now framed. Like my Iron Maiden posters that were all chewed up, I restored to mint condition, and I now have them in a screening room in my house, except with like original Italian one sheets. The posters that I have in my room where I watch my movies in my house are Eaten Alive, Cannibal Ferox, Manhattan Baby, Cannibal Holocaust. It's like literally nothing's changed. It's just just like a cleaner version of my parents' basement.
And way in the back there, yes?
Hi. Horror films seem to go through waves. You know, a few years ago there was the Japanese wave of horror films, and then the French came along and made some interesting movies, and then obviously now remakes seem to be what people want to do. What do you see as the next wave of horror films, or for you the next kind of director or writer that might capture people's imagination?
Well, it's obviously impossible to predict these things. You know, generally, horror movies are reflective of what the country is going through and what the fear is of the time. It's sort of, you get this sort of collective unconscious of things, something that everyone's freaking out about secretly to themselves, and then they go see it. I mean, I think that sort of the zombie craze and the Walking Dead phenomenon is, you know, this feeling that the apocalypse is coming. It's sort of a visualization of this fear that, like, things are falling apart. But I think it does go in cycles. But I try not to think about what's coming next. I just try to think about what I want to see and what I feel is happening in contemporary culture and go out and make it before someone else does.
Speaking of contemporary culture, what do you make of the recent cannibal-type attacks that have happened in the West? And does that then affect how you'll go in and deal
No,
with your films?
I mean, it's weird that I'm actually in prep on a cannibal movie, and then there's 2 cannibal attacks. So I feel like I was slightly ahead of the curve. But you know, people are fucking nuts, and I wouldn't put anything past them. And we've got a question here.
Hi there.
Hi there.
How's it going?
Good.
So yeah, obviously in these kind of old classic movies, there's a lot of work that went into live casting and prosthetic work and things like that. And generally the movies that I've been seeing coming out kind of with budgets are primarily digital, and effects are only used kind of in the conceptual stages of artwork. Do you feel that there's still going to be kind of work for special effects artists and practical effects in the future?
But yeah, I just had an amazing experience with all practical effects on Hemlock Grove. I love makeup. I love anything organic, and I think that it's a tool, much like digital is a tool. Now, what you can do digitally is what's happened that I've seen is that the guys at K&B Effects, who are amazing, Greg Nicotero and Howard Berger, and they do all my movies. You know, they know that I love practical gore and practical effects. For me, there's no substitute. When it's done real, it's just, you get such a visceral reaction. It's you just feel it in your guts. But there are great things you can do digitally to sort of help massage it. And I think that you're going to see sort of a hybrid between the two. But for me, it's like morphing. You know, James Cameron understands morphing, and then everybody, you know, suddenly everyone's doing morphing, and it doesn't make any sense. So to me, it's like digital effects and practical effects are all a tool, and it's really up to the director to understand how to use that tool and how to make it most effective for the story they're telling. It's like a musician. You could put electric guitars and distortion on the amplifier, but only Jimi Hendrix knew exactly how much distortion to use, or Jimmy Page. So it's really up to the director to understand. You know, Peter Jackson understands when to use practical and when to use digital. So it really takes the director understanding what tool best tells the story and how to best use it.
We've got time for one more question over here on one outside.
Hi. I just have to ask you the things that you mentioned, that cannibalism is the last frontier of, I guess, the human violence. What do you think of films like Salo, where it's complete decadence, complete degrading of humanity? What do you think about that?
I mean, I love Salo. It's one of my favorite films. It's a hard film to watch, but it's an incredible movie. You know, the first time I saw it, I had been prepared for it, and it was still pretty shocking. But, you know, Salo, I think, is a great allegory for, you know, World War II and for fascism and sort of what humanity had become in World War II and what people were doing to each other. So if you look at Salo, it's horrific, and then you look at what was actually going on in the time, it's far worse, with, you know, with the Holocaust and fascism. So I think it's an incredible film, but to me, I never, ever, unless it's like an animal being killed, see movies as violent. I see them as a representation of violence. I see it as like looking at a painting, looking at a picture. To me, it's all makeup. You know, it's effective storytelling. Yeah, when the meat hooks go through her tits, you feel it. But at the end of the day, I know it's corn syrup and food coloring and foam latex.
At the end of the day, it's just the color red.
It's
If you want to
just
interpret it as red, as blood, okay, it was just the color red.
Exactly.
So, and there's one person over here who had a question.
I liked your cameo in Piranha 3D.
Thank you very much.
How was your experience with that?
Well, as a fan of Piranha movies in general, you know, I'd actually sort of come off the heels of shooting Inglourious Bastards and said, okay, this is it. I'm never going to have a better acting experience than this, you know, working with this incredible cast and that director. And then Alex Aja called me in his very charming French way, and he's like, Eli, you must play as the host of the wet t-shirt contest. And I said, what time do you need me? It was great. Although I will say this, I'm like a complete germaphobe and very neurotic, so of course, you know, we had a motorboat scene that we filmed that never got used, and then like I felt like I was getting something itchy in my eye, and I looked around, there was all this motor oil in the ground, like all the girls had suntan oil, and the lake was so disgusting, and I was on that raft with 20 strippers, which seemed fun until it was like 110 degrees, and they're like all peeing every 5 minutes in the water, and there's like this oil slick of like the motorboats, and I was like, oh my god, what did my eyes get in? Is that girl pee in my eye? Did I get infected? And then so I started rubbing it, and of course it gets like really like infected. Everyone's like, what the fuck happened to your eye? And the next day we were supposed to do a photo shoot for Esquire magazine for about Inglourious Bastards. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna be in Esquire with this huge fucking brundlefly eye. And so, like, I drove back from Lake Havasu and got in at 1 in the morning, and I was supposed to be up at 7, and I went to the emergency room, and I sat there just to get my eye checked out, and the doctor's like, what happened? And I was like, I don't know, I had a motorboat accident. He's like, what do you mean? You look all right. I was like, well, you know, and like the thing with the girl. And he looked at my eyes like, it's fine. You just go like, stop rubbing it, and it will be okay. And I was like, okay. And that's what happened. So it started out great until my neurosis turned it into a hospital experience that was completely unnecessary.
So we're going to announce one of the 10 films we've got for Midnight Madness, which is obviously coming this September. The press release will be going out tomorrow, hopefully around 10 o'clock, but we decided to leak one to you lucky people. And we are pleased to have the world premiere of the Chilean-American co-production, directed by Nicholas Lopez, Aftershock, written by Nicholas Lopez and Eli, and produced by Eli, and also you're
starring
in the film
me.
too. Yeah, so Eli
Okay,
Roth.
yes, Aftershock, thank you. The world premiere will be here at Tiff, the 10-year anniversary of Cabin Fever. So thank you, Colin. And it's I'm not sure which date, but it's in September, and come check it out. It's a fun.
Do you want to tell them about what's the log line on it?
Yeah, it's based on Nicholas Lopez's stories of what happened in the earthquake in Chile, which was an 8.8, and it was his stories. It went off at 3:30 in the morning. Most people were out partying in clubs, but basically the whole country shook like an amusement park for 3.5 minutes. People, like, shit crashed down. People's hands got, one guy's hands got cut off. Everything fell apart. The prisons broke open. There was no police. There was no fire. It was like fucking anarchy for like 6 hours until daylight. And there was towns where there was tsunami warning, and everyone in the town fucking panicked, and people started stampeding. So his stories of what happened in the earthquake were so horrific that we said we have to make a movie about this. So it's sort of based on all these true events that happened, but it's about this earthquake in Chile, and we shot it there, and we did almost everything practically because a lot of the country is still destroyed from the earthquake. But what's great about Chile is they don't have the same safety laws they do in America, so we got to do shit in Chile that I could never, ever have gotten away with in America, and it looks fucking crazy. There hasn't been an earthquake movie in like 30 years, or maybe 40 years since the 73, and Nicolas fucking went for it, and he made a really, really, really fucking crazy ride. It's insane.
So come out for the world premiere of Aftershock, and thank you very much, Eli Roth.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming out.